In a galaxy forged by war, one truth echoes. The bigger the weapon, the brighter the hubris. From planet-smashing lasers to star-eating abominations, Star Wars superweapons aren't just tools of destruction. They're monuments to arrogance. But which reigns supreme? We're ranking 20 apocalyptic engines from pathetic to galaxy-breaking, judged by 4 brutal metrics: raw power, tech insanity, historical carnage, and how hard they backfired on their creators. Spoiler: size doesn't matter until it literally blows up in your face. The void between stars is never silent. It thrums with the ghosts of engines, the whispers of battles long cold. But in the early days of the Clone Wars, a new sound haunted the dark, the groan of the malevolence, a separatist leviathan drifting like a serpent through fog. Its hull, pocked and jagged, swallowed the light of distant suns. At its heart pulsed a weapon not of fire, but of silence, a storm frozen in steel. General Grievous stalked its corridors, his breath a rasping hymn to carnage. To the Republic, he was myth-made metal. To the clones, a nightmare clipped from hollow feeds. But the malevolence was his true voice. Not a warship, a predator. Its claws were twin ion pulse cannons, primed to bleed starships of their spark. Imagine the Venator-class cruisers, their hulls gleaming like freshly minted credits, cutting through the Khalida Nebula. They did not see the shadow until it was too late. The malevolence emerged as a spider from a web of gas, its cannons crackling with blue fury. A discharge rippled outward, not light, but anti-light, a thunderclap of pure negation. The Republic ships shuddered, their engines dying mid-ignition, lights dimmed, screens flickered to black. In the silence, clones clutched their helmets, their comms hissing static. This was no mere battle. It was uncreation. The ion pulse left no scars, no flames, only ships adrift, their crews stranded in frozen tombs. Grievous reveled in it. His laughter echoed through the malevolence's bridge as he watched escape pods jettison, tiny sparks swallowed by the dark. "Let them float," he snarled. "Let the Republic taste fear." But fear, in time, breeds defiance. Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, all reckless grit and molten instinct, traced the malevolence's kills like breadcrumbs. He found the pattern: ambush points near medical stations where wounded clones fled. Mercy turned into bait. The Republic's brightest minds schemed to counter the ion cannon, shields, evasive maneuvers. But Skywalker saw simpler truths. Every weapon has a throat. The malevolence's weakness lay in its hunger. To fire the cannon, it needed to charge, its reactors humming like a choir of dying stars. Skywalker and his Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, lured Grievous into the nebula's heart, where sensors blurred and instincts frayed. Their fighters danced through crystalline debris, drawing the Leviathan's gaze. When the ion pulse fired, they were ready. The blue wave surged. But the Jedi weren't there. Their ships had pivoted, using the nebula's reflective gas as a mirror. The pulse ricocheted, cascading back into the malevolence's own hull. Lights died, systems failed. Grievous's scream was lost to the sudden silence as his ship began to die. The malevolence's final moments were a dirge. Its engines sputtered, dragging it into the belly of a nearby moon. Metal screamed. Atmosphere burned, and the galaxy learned its first lesson of the war. Terror cannot outrun ingenuity. But the ion cannon's legacy lingered. Republic engineers dissected its wreckage, scribbling notes on blueprints that would one day birth darker things. The clones, though, told different stories. In the barracks, they whispered of the ship that killed without a sound, of friends who vanished into the void, their last breaths trapped in dead radios. And somewhere in the galaxy's shadowed edges, a new weapon stirred, not of lightning, but of night itself. War is not always thunder. Sometimes it is the absence of sound, the slow, suffocating dark that coils around a world like a serpent's embrace. After the malevolence's electric rage came a weapon of quieter horror, the orbital nightcloak. Not a blade, but a shroud. Not a bombardment, but a burial. Grand Admiral Thrawn, architect of this silence, understood what lesser warlords did not. To break a people, you need not shatter their cities. Starve their skies instead. Let their sun vanish. Let their hope freeze. The nightcloak was no mere shadow. It was a galaxy-spanning siege engine, a lattice of satellites woven like a black widow's web. Deployed above Coruscant, Kessel, or any world that dared defy the Empire's resurgence, it did not burn or blast. It smothered, activated, and light died. Not the flicker of a fuse, the totality of a tomb seal. Stars winked out. Solar grids failed. Planets plunged into a cold so profound it gnawed at bones. Imagine Coruscant, the galactic crown jewel, its trillion lights dimming like dying fireflies. Skyscrapers, once glowing arteries, now stood as ice-veined monoliths. The air itself thickened, frost blooming on transparent steel. Citizens huddled in synthetic caves, their breath hanging in the dark. The Senate Tower, that symbol of bloated democracy, became a glacier. Thrawn watched from his star destroyer Chimera, his crimson eyes reflecting the void below. To him, this was art, a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Fear of the dark is primal, he mused to his lieutenant Peleon. Even Jedi once trembled at it. But the Nightcloak's true genius was its patience. It did not kill quickly. It let the cold linger. Crops withered. Generators spluttered. Species that had never known night now clawed at their own skin, whispering myths of ancient suns. On Kessel, spice miners tore through each other in the blackness, their madness echoing through the tunnels. The New Republic scrambled. X-wings patrolled the edges of the artificial eclipse, sensors blinded. Princess Leia Organa, her resolve as sharp as Beskar, pleaded for a countermeasure. But how do you fight nothingness? The answer came from the unlikeliest thread. A forgotten TIE Defender prototype, retrofitted with sensor tech stolen from the Maw installation. Its pilot, a defected Imperial engineer, pierced the Nightcloak's veil, mapping its energy signatures. The satellites were vulnerable in their alignment, each a black jewel in a necklace of annihilation. The Republic's strike was a ballet of desperation. A-wing squadrons dove into the abyss, guide lights off, flying by instinct and memory. Blaster fire glanced off the satellite's obsidian shells, until one cracked. Then another. Light speared through like a dagger, thawing the darkness. Thrawn did not rage. He smiled. The Nightcloak's destruction was a lesson, not a loss. They believe they've won a sunrise, he said. But shadows always return. And they did. In the Nightcloak's wake, entire ecosystems collapsed. Oceans remained slush. Species went extinct, whispering for dawn. The Republic's victory tasted of ashes. Yet in the deepest dark, secrets stir. Beneath Kessel's frozen crust, a machine older than the Empire began to hum. War, in time, forgets its shape. Blades rust, armies fade. But the galaxy never truly escapes the Sith. Their weapons sleep, buried like serpents in the deep, waiting to strike. After Thrawn's cold calculus came a hotter, older evil, the Ascendant Spear, a Sith dreadnought forged not to conquer worlds, but to unmake them. Its payload, not explosives, but a song, a hymn of annihilation. The old Republic trembled in this age. The Sith Empire, risen from ashes and spite, hungered to break the Jedi's bones. And Darth Mekis, her mind a labyrinth of cruelty, engineered their masterpiece. The resonance torpedo. It did not orbit. It did not bombard. It burrowed. Picture a planet. Say, Duro, its vast industrial cities pulsing with life. The Ascendant Spear arrives not with fanfare, but silence. Its hull, black as a closed fist, carves through the atmosphere. From its belly slides a projectile, glowing faintly crimson. Not a missile, a needle. The torpedo strikes the surface with a whisper. No crater, no fire, only a vibration, faint as a spider's tread. Then, deeper it drills, down through crust and mantle to the planet's beating heart. There, it sings. The resonance torpedo's frequency was no accident. Mekis had studied ancient Sith sorceries, the ones that shattered Korriban's moons. Her weapon tuned itself to the planet's core, matching its pulse until sympathy. A single note, sustained. And the world screamed. Tectonic plates shivered like struck gongs. Mountains folded like parchment. Cities sank into sudden chasms, their screams swallowed by the roar of collapsing earth. Atmosphere curdled. Storms of ash and lightning birthing monsters of dust. Darth Mekis watched from orbit. Her satisfaction, a slow poison. "The Jedi speak of balance," she hissed. "Let them choke on it." The Republic's response was panic. Evacuations failed. Hyperlanes clogged with refugees. Jedi Knights meditated on the Force's ripples, seeking the torpedo's signature, a soundless cry only they could hear. One Padawan, name lost to history, described it as the galaxy's teeth grinding. But the Sith's triumph bred arrogance. At Raxus Prime, they aimed to shatter a core world. The Ascendant Spear descended, its torpedo primed. Yet the planet fought back, not with shields, but with resonance of its own. Deep in Raxus's core churned ancient machinery, leftovers from a forgotten species. When the torpedo's frequency surged, the machines answered. A dissonant chord rippled upward, clashing with the Sith's song. The planet shuddered, then stilled. The torpedo's backlash tore through the Ascendant Spear. Circuits melted, engines screamed. Darth Mekis perished with her creation, her final rage echoing through the Force. The dreadnought cracked like an egg, spilling its secrets into the void. Yet remnants lingered. Republic scouts found the torpedo's schematics etched into surviving Dura steel. A dark gospel. Some called it a warning. Others, a temptation. Years later, on Malachor, a similar vibration would ripple through a battlefield, turning warriors to statues. Coincidence? The Jedi doubted it. The Force, they whispered, remembers all the songs. But the resonance torpedo's true legacy was subtler. On fractured worlds, survivors swore they heard the humming in their sleep, a sound beneath sound, like the galaxy grinding its teeth. And in the Sith Empire's ruins, a new weapon stirred. Not of song, but of shadow, its blueprints etched in blood. The Sith's echoes are never silent. Their failures breed ambition in darker hearts. After the resonance torpedo's discordant end, whispers spread of a new folly, a weapon born not from Sith sorcery, but from the avarice of mercenaries, a blade meant to carve a warlord's name into the stars. They called it darksaber. Not the ancient Mandalorian relic, but a hollow mimic, a skeletal mockery of the Death Star's dread. Dirge, the Gendai bounty hunter, was no engineer. His immortality lay in regeneration, not ingenuity. Yet his hunger for carnage drew schemers and sycophants, disgraced imperial scientists, Hutt foundry engineers, and warlords clutching blueprints stained with ash. Together, they forged a ringed monstrosity in the Outer Rim's lawless void, a weapon of spikes and arrogance. Imagine a space station, all jagged angles and exposed circuitry, orbiting a dead moon. Its central array, a lattice of focusing lens and cracked kyber, clawed at the void like broken teeth. The darksaber's design was theft masquerading as innovation, a superlaser stripped of the Death Star's precision, its power untamed, its aim as reckless as Dirge's grin. The Mandalorians learned of it first. Not the pacifists of Concordia, but the old clans, those who remembered when their ancestors hunted Jedi. To them, the darksaber was an insult, a reduction. Mandalore's soul had been forged in war, but never without honor. This was butchery in a blunt instrument. They infiltrated the project. A spy in durasteel armor, her sigil hidden, slipped into the reactor core. Sabotage was an art. She did not blast or burn. She tweaked. A calibration altered here, a power coupling misaligned there. The darksaber's test fire was meant to crack a moon. Instead, it birthed a scream. When Dirge triggered the weapon, the laser awoke, a crimson scar tearing through the dark. But instability rippled through its beam. The kyber crystals, malnourished and mistreated, rebelled. Light fractured. The beam splintered, lashing the station like a whip of fire. Dirge roared as conduits exploded, melting his flesh faster than he could heal. The darksaber's death throes were a symphony of hubris. The laser array buckled, spraying shrapnel into the void. The station's spine cracked, its halves drifting apart as gas and debris bloomed like a bloodstain in water. Survivors fled in pods, their transmissions laced with madness. It wasn't a weapon, it was a trap. Yet the galaxy's warlords took no lessons. In the debris field, scavengers salvaged shards of kyber, whispering of greater designs. Even in ruin, the darksaber's shadow stretched far. On Geonosis, Poggle the Lesser studied its schematics, his compound eyes gleaming. On Mustafar, a Sith cultist pocketed a data chip, murmuring of correcting the flaws. Dirge survived, of course. He always did. Floating in the wreckage, his body a molten tangle, he laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "Next time," he vowed to the stars. "Next time, I'll skin the Mandalorians slowly." But the Mandalorians had already vanished. Their spy returned to the clans, her armor scuffed but unbroken. Around campfires on Concord Dawn, they drank and spat the darksaber's name like a curse. A weapon without a wielder, their elder scoffed. "A blade without a heart." And yet, the debris field moved. Not from scavengers, not from solar winds. Something within the dead station stirred, clicking and hissing. A creature, a machine, or something older, woken by the Kyber's death cry. The answer would come in screams, in a world where steel met scale. The galaxy's wars are not fought by droids or soldiers alone. Sometimes they are waged by monsters, ones we birth ourselves. After the darksaber's hollow roar came a deeper, older sound. The bellow of the Zillo beast. A creature dragged from ancient nightmares and reborn in the Republic's image. Not a machine, but flesh weaponized. A primal force caged in scaled armor, unleashed upon the very heart of democracy. It began on Malastare, where the Republic sought fuel and found ruin. The original Zillo beast, a myth made manifest, erupted from the planet's depths, a mountain of claws and impenetrable scales, its hide shrugging off turbolasers like rain. Jedi and clones watched in awe as it devoured tanks, swatted starfighters, and roared with the fury of a forgotten age. When it fell, poisoned by desperate hands, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine issued a quiet command. Clone it. Ethics dissolved in the face of opportunity. Scientists on Coruscant's hidden levels labored under crimson-lit labs, splicing genes and bending evolution. The creature that grew in their vats was not a perfect copy. It was worse, larger, angrier. Its golden scales shimmered with a refractive cruelty, turning blaster bolts into sparks. Palpatine called it a living siege engine. The Senate, ever obedient, called it progress. But the beast knew only rage. When it broke free, it did not crawl. It exploded. Lab walls crumpled like flimsyplast. Troopers fired in vain, their screams drowned by a roar that shook the Senate district's foundations. The creature ascended, scaling skyscrapers as if they were trees, its tail whipping through speeder traffic. Turbolaser batteries mounted on the Jedi Temple's spires unleashed barrages, yet the beams skittered off its hide, scorching the city it was meant to protect. Coruscant burned, but not from bombs. From shame. The Jedi faced a new kind of enemy. Lightsabers glanced harmlessly. The Force itself recoiled from the beast's primal aura. Anakin Skywalker, ever the improviser, lured it to the underworld's depths, where durasteel bridges groaned under its weight. But even as it plunged into darkness, the lesson lingered. The Republic had become the very darkness it swore to destroy. Palpatine's lieutenants scoured the wreckage for scales, eager to armor their legions. They found only echoes. The beast's DNA, they soon learned, was a labyrinth, each clone more unstable than the last. Yet the Chancellor's obsession endured. In private hollow recordings, he mused, "Why conquer a planet when you can terrify it?" But terror, once unleashed, cannot be caged. Refugees from Coruscant's lower levels whispered of the beast's ghost, stalking the underworld. Some claimed its scales still grew there, metastasizing in the dark, birthing new horrors. And in the Senate's hollow chambers, a different beast stirred, one of policy and propaganda. Bills were passed, budgets swelled. The Republic's war machine, now intoxicated by its own power, turned its gaze to the stars. War's greatest evils often begin as promises. After the Zillo beast's rampage, the Republic craved a cleaner terror, a weapon of light, not claws. Thus rose Tarkin's vision, a laser to pierce moons, not scales. A skeletal prototype, cobbled from stolen dreams and Geonosian iron, birthed in the obsidian womb of a secret foundry. Its architects called it progress. Its targets would call it prophecy. Galen Erso, the man who could split atoms but not his conscience, stood at the heart of this paradox. To the Republic, he was a genius. To his daughter, Jin, a ghost who whispered equations into the dark. The superlaser was his sin and salvation. A way to end wars swiftly, he told himself, even as its blueprints bled into something monstrous. The prototype hung in Geonosis's orbit, a jagged ring of struts and exposed wiring. No Death Star yet, just a scaffold of ambition. Its central laser array, fed by unstable kyber crystals, pulsed like a sickly heart. When Tarkin ordered the first test, the engineers held their breath. Galen closed his eyes. The beam fired. A sputtering gash of green, wobbling as it tore through the void. It struck a barren moon, not with the Death Star's surgical spite, but with the violence of a child's tantrum. The surface erupted in molten waves, but the laser fractured, scattering debris into the surrounding fleet. A star destroyer vanished in the firestorm. Tarkin clasped his hands behind his back. "Adjust the harmonics," he said, cool as vacuum. Galen's rebellion was quiet. He sabotaged algorithms, fudged calculations, small acts of defiance that bled the laser's potency. Director Krennic, ever the weasel in a white cape, sniffed out his hesitation. "Sentiment is a flaw, Erso," he sneered. "The Emperor prefers results." But results demanded sacrifice. The next test targeted a living moon, Iago, its caves teeming with phosphorescent life. Galen stood on the observation deck, watching the laser charge. The kyber crystals screamed in their casings, their song a discordant wail only he could hear. When the beam fired, it veered drunkenly, carving a canyon into Iago's sister moon instead. The explosion lit the system like a supernova. Jin, light years away, felt it in her bones. The Republic buried the fallout. Propaganda hollows spun the test as a mining accident. But in the shadows, Galen's resolve hardened. He smuggled data to Saw Gerrera, his fingers trembling as he encoded messages about Kyber's true purpose. Each transmission was a prayer. Let someone stop this. Let me be wrong. The final test broke him. A captured separatist dreadnought, crewed by POWs, was anchored as target practice. The laser fired true this time. No wobble, no error. The ship vaporized, atoms unraveling in a silent bloom. Galen stared at the empty coordinates, his reflection ghostly in the viewport. Among the dead was a friend, a scientist who'd dared question Tarkin's ambition. That night, he fled. Not just the lab, but his own legacy. The Erso homestead on Lahmu became a tomb for his guilt, its fields salted with ash. Yet the prototype endured, its flaws ironed out by less scrupulous minds. The scaffold grew, the laser sharpened. Years later, Jin would hold a hologram of that skeletal weapon, its image flickering in her palm like a dying star. She'd understand then. Her father's masterpiece was never the laser. It was the flaw he baked into it, the seed of its own destruction. But in the moment, there was only aftermath. The prototype's wreckage, discarded once Death Star plans solidified, drifted in Geonosis's orbit, a nest for carrion ships and scavengers. Some whispered that the laser's first target, that scarred moon, still glowed faintly, and in its cracks, something moved. Not insectoid Geonosians, reborn in their hives, Something older, buried deep, stirred by the Kyber's cry. The galaxy, it seemed, would always answer fire with fire. Darkness is patient. It does not conquer. It consumes. After Tarkin's crude lasers came a subtler evil, a weapon not of fire, but of famine. The Sith of the Old Republic, masters of the slow blade, crafted the shroud, a celestial shroud, a veil stitched from stolen starlight. Not a blockade, a burial. It began with a whisper, a star winking out, not in death, but in theft. The shroud's architects, Sith lords whose names even history feared to etch, had unearthed Rakatan tech, a relic that bent light like cloth. Their innovation was perverse simplicity. Wrap a star in darkness and watch its children wither. Imagine a system like Tython in its prime, lush and singing with the Force. The shroud descended as a spider's silk, invisible until the sun dimmed. First, twilight. Then, an unbroken midnight. Crops froze. Oceans thickened to slush. Jedi meditated in vain, their connection to the Force muffled as if wrapped in gauze. The Sith did not conquer. They waited. The shroud was not a machine. It was a ritual. Sith acolytes chanted in forgotten tongues aboard derelict ships, their voices harmonizing with the screams of captive stars. The technology defied replication, a blend of sorcery and astrophysics that left Republic scientists gibbering in frustration. Admiral Saul Karath, tasked with breaking the blockade, wrote in his log, "It's like fighting smoke with a sword." On Alderaan, yes, that Alderaan, centuries before its fate, nobility melted into desperation. The planet's famed glaciers crept over vineyards. Artists burned paintings for warmth. A young queen, her crown heavy with futility, ordered the bombing of her own orbital mirrors to reflect residual heat, a gesture as vain as spitting into a black hole. The Jedi's answer was a ghost. Mitra Surik, the exile, her connection to the Force a scarred thing, volunteered to lead a suicide mission. Her ship, Ebon Hawk, slipped through the shroud's tendrils, sensors blinded, hull groaning. What she found was not a station, but a wound, a tear in space where light bled into nothing. The Sith's chant reverberated through the void, a hymn of entropy. Her solution was pure Jedi irony, not destruction, reflection. Using the Hawk's deflector shields, she bounced a sliver of stolen starlight back into the shroud's heart. Light pierced the dark. The Sith ships, their rituals half-spoken, imploded as the shroud recoiled. A star reborn in a flash of vengeful radiance. But victory was ashes. Alderaan survived, yet its ecosystems never recovered. Glaciers remained. The Queen abdicated, her voice forever hoarse from screaming orders into the dark. The Republic, shaken, banned all research into stellar manipulation. A ban the Sith, of course, ignored. The shroud's remnants lingered like a curse. In the outer rim, traders spoke of veiled stars, systems where sunlight felt thin, where crops grew stunted. Some claimed the shroud had never fully died. It merely slept, its tendrils coiled in the unexplored void, waiting for a darker hand to wake it. And in the depths of Korriban, a Sith Lord's holocron flickered to life, its keeper murmuring, "The shroud was but a prototype. The true abyss awaits." The galaxy, ever unready, turned its face to the stars, unaware that in the shadows between, something colder than night began to stir. The Sith, do not conquer, they scar. After the Shroud's silent starvation came a weapon of naked brutality, the eclipsed fury, a star destroyer reborn in the Legacy era's fires. Its hull, blackened and studded with spines, prowled the stars like a wolf with a galaxy to devour. At its bow throbbed a superlaser, crimson as a fresh wound, designed not to destroy planets, but to bisect them. A blade for a Butcher King. Darth Krayt, the Sith's twisted phoenix, rose from death itself to wield it. His philosophy was simple. Fear is the only language the galaxy understands. The eclipsed fury was his grammar. Where the Death Star obliterated, Krayt's weapon humiliated. Rebellious worlds cracked open like rotten fruit, their cores spilling into the void. Take Dak, the Mon Calamari homeworld. Its oceans churned with defiance, its shipyards fueling the Galactic Alliance's last stand. The eclipsed fury arrived without fanfare. No demands, no siege, only a single searing beam, a vertical slash of hellfire. The planet's crust split along equatorial lines, water vaporizing into steam clouds that lingered for decades. Survivors floated in the debris field, their gills fluttering in vacuum as Krayt's hologram sneered. This is the price of resistance. The superlaser's engineering was a perverse marvel. Kyber crystals, tortured into alignment, channeled energy through a prism of Sith alchemy. The beam burned hotter and hungrier than the Death Stars, its afterglow staining sensors for hours. Engineers whispered that it fed on pain, that the screams of its victims amplified its power. But Krayt's arrogance blinded him. The Galactic Alliance remnant, ragged but relentless, studied the eclipsed fury's attacks. Noticed a flaw. The superlaser's recharge cycle left the ship's shields unbalanced for 47 seconds. A sliver of time, a sliver of hope. The counterstrike was led by Jedi Knight Cade Skywalker, a rogue with death in his veins and Krayt's own blood on his blade. His squadron, a motley pack of smugglers and defectors, dove into the eclipsed fury's shadow. Turbolasers clawed at their ships. Cade's Mynock weaved through the firestorm, its hull scorched, targeting locked on the shield generators. When the torpedoes struck, the fury shuddered, a titan stumbling. Krayt, ensconced in his throne of obsidian, roared as alarms blared. The superlaser, mid-charge, overloaded. Kyber cores fractured. The beam lanced sideways, shearing the Star Destroyer's own spine. Death came slowly. Atmosphere hissed into space. Sith crewmen clawed at sealed doors. Krayt, his body a patchwork of decaying flesh and cybernetics, limped to an escape pod. His final transmission a vow. The Sith Eternal will rise. But the galaxy had already turned. The eclipsed fury's wreckage became a tomb, its carcass scavenged for secrets. Smugglers pried Kyber shards from the ruins, their hands blistering at the crystal's residual rage. On Dak, engineers repurposed the planet's fissure into a geothermal forge, channeling its pain into engines of liberation. Yet the fury's echo endured. On Korriban, Sith acolytes studied its blueprints, scribbling notes on how to refine the design. Next time, one mused, we'll carve stars, not planets. And in the deep unknown, a fragment of the superlaser's beam drifted, a tendril of crimson light, frozen in the void. Waiting, in the hushed calm that follows a battlefield's carnage, the Dark Reaper emerges as a monument to Sith depravity. A skeletal monolith, designed not merely to destroy flesh and steel, but to siphon the very essence of life itself. Born in the cataclysmic crucible of the Great Sith War, this ancient engine of annihilation lay dormant for millennia, until whispers of its return echoed through separatist ranks during the Clone War. Count Dooku, ever the seeker of forbidden power, dispatched agents to the junkyard world of Raxus Prime to recover the Reaper's heart, the Force Harvester, a device capable of drawing living Force energy into its dark coils. Under Dooku's command, Sidon Prax, a mercenary with ruthless efficiency, lit the Harvester's power banks on Kashyyyk's moon Alaris, unleashing a wave that drained forests and warriors alike, leaving ash in its wake. The ground itself quaked as the Harvester pulsed, a grim herald of the Reaper's looming revival. Rising from the blackened sands of Thula, the Dark Reaper's structure is both skeletal and sentient. Its corrodured durasteel frame towers hundreds of meters, veins of crimson-hued kyber conduits, weaving a pattern reminiscent of a ribcage. Atop its spire, siphon spines fan outward like the claws of a cosmic predator, each tipped with crystalline nodes that hum with predatory intent. These nodes, tuned to the subtle frequencies of the Force, extend an invisible web that draws life essence from any being within range. When the Reaper awakens, a low-frequency resonance ripples through the Force, a sound felt more than heard. Clone troopers report their armor's electronics flickering, as if starved of power, and Jedi find their lightsabers sputtering, their connection to the Force faltering under the machine's oppressive vampirism. On the battlements of Kessiak's ancient citadel, the first test began. The Reaper unleashed a siphoning wave, and ranks of separatist droids advanced unhindered, for their lack of a living soul rendered them immune to the weapon's locus of terror. But the Republic's defenders, both clone and Jedi, found courage hard to muster, as the very air around them felt drained of hope. Recognizing the Reaper's apocalyptic potential, Jedi Master Mace Windu dispatched Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi to Ren Var, seeking the tomb of Ulic Qel-Droma, the only one who had once bested the Reaper. Deep within the Sith city's catacombs, Anakin communed with Ulic's spirit, learning the secret. A synchronized burst of concentrated light-side energy could shatter the siphon's harmonic nexus. As the Republic fleet engaged separatist cruisers above, Anakin led a ground assault through collapsing halls, racing toward the Reaper's core under storm-tossed skies. In a battle of wills, Skywalker and his strike team infiltrated the Reaper's base. They planted kyber-charged charges at the nexus points deep within the siphon spines. When the torpedoes detonated, a wave of pure white energy surged outward, clashing with the Reaper's crimson siphons in a silent conflagration. The monolith convulsed as siphon spines fractured, their nodes exploding into shards of black crystal and flickering light. With a final ear-splitting shriek, the Reaper collapsed in on itself, its towering form crumpling into a heap of smoking ruins. Clone and Jedi alike emerged wounded but unbroken, their sacrifice a testament to solidarity in the face of ultimate darkness. Though destroyed, the Dark Reaper's menace lingers in hollow archives and Jedi holocrons as a dire warning. Weapons born of the Force carry a corruption that transcends mere technology. Shards of its siphon crystals were scattered across the outer rim, each piece coveted by cultists seeking to harness its grim power. Republic engineers studied its remains for years, debating whether to entomb the fragments in vaults or destroy them outright. Meanwhile, Jedi meditated on the Reaper's lesson, that the Force, when twisted into a weapon, becomes an abyss into which even the strongest spirit can fall. As the last echoes of the Dark Reaper's hum vanish into ash-choked winds, our course shifts to the far reaches of hyperspace, where Palpatine's galaxy gun readies its vengeance. In the cold expanse beyond Coruscant's orbit, a silent spear glints against the void, a weapon forged in revenge and unleashed from beyond the grave. Known as the Galaxy Gun, this ancient hyperdrive-capable cannon was resurrected in the Dark Empire's darkest hour, when Emperor Palpatine himself returned to strike at the heart of the New Republic. Conceived long ago in Palpatine's secret laboratories, it lay hidden until spun forth on glittering rails of dark side alchemy, ready to hurl its grim projectiles through hyperspace and detonate above any world, anywhere, at his command. Reactivation began with a whisper among the Imperial remnant, coordinates traced to a forgotten asteroid field in the Outer Rim. There, covert teams of inquisitors and technocrats unearthed the Galaxy Gun's skeletal frame, an array half a kilometer long, its barrel assembled from interlocking kyber crystal segments and obsidian-hued conduits fed by shadow-bound grav drives. Servo motors hummed with ancient power as grav drive coils glowed violet, calibrating their hyperspatial resonance. Work crews labored in plague-masked suits, welding panels of dusk-shrouded alloy and reattuning the weapon's targeting matrix. Its first clandestine test was never meant to be subtle. Under the cover of a system-wide communications blackout, a silent probe missile punched through hyperspace over Dak's frozen frost plains. In that desolate wilderness, a remote geology outpost blinked offline as the probe's hypermatter core imploded in a silent bloom. Seismographs worldwide registered the event as a mild quake, but on the ground, sensors recorded a sudden spike in local radiation, and a swath of rock vaporized into superheated mist. Survivors spoke of a horizon split by a phantom pillar of fire, yet no craft or starship was ever seen. But Dak was only a prologue. For his grand vengeance, Palpatine chose Bastion, the New Republic's crowning capital. In its sleek Senate chambers and luminescent spires, peace talks had just concluded under the watchful eyes of ambassadors from every sector. Without warning, an unregistered object tore through hyperspace above Bastion's upper atmosphere. No approach vector, no distress call, only the flash of ionized air as a black projectile cleaved the clouds. In an instant, the Galaxy Gun's warhead detonated, unleashing a dual-stage blast. First, a hypermatter surge fractured the planet's crust. Then, shards of condensed dark energy rained down, disintegrating matter at the molecular level. Bastion's gleaming towers erupted in silent cataclysm, tectonic plates snapped like brittle glass, and a seismic shock rolled across oceans in deadly waves. From orbit, resistance frigates watched helplessly as their homeworld collapsed into a scarred husk. Engineers later discovered the weapon's dreadful sophistication. Its warheads carried a hypermatter charge to breach planetary defenses, followed by a cascade of dark energy fragments keyed to local gravitational harmonics. This ensured that nothing could resist or repair the devastation. Buried databases, terraforming generators, even subterranean refuges were turned to ash. Witnesses described a cold that lingered long after, the air itself bereft of warmth as if the weapon had siphoned hope along with life. Yet for all its unmatched lethality, the Galaxy Gun bore a critical flaw. Each shot demanded days of hyperdrive recharging and a fresh shipment of stabilized hypermatter crystals mined from Ilum's shattered caverns. Recognizing this, Palpatine's inner circle hoarded crystal stocks in hidden vaults and sabotaged supply depots to maintain scarcity. When rumors of the weapon's next target, Hosnian Prime, reached Resistance ears, scouts uncovered the location of a secret relay platform in the Ainoat sector. There, they discovered a cache of crystal canisters rigged with delayed charges, a gamble that would either cripple production or doom their next strike. Sensing the impending salvo, Poe Dameron orchestrated a bold interception. Leading Black Squadron in modified interceptors, they ambushed the Galaxy Gun's warhead mid-transit. Using retrofitted proton torpedoes armed with gravitic fuses, they struck the hyperdrive core at sublight velocity. The resulting hyperspace rupture engulfed the asteroid platform, collapsing its rails and obliterating the weapon's physical nexus. In a riot of scarlet light, the Galaxy Gun vanished, its energy signature swallowed by a cascading subspace shock that knocked out communications in a swath of nearby systems. In the aftermath, the New Republic fleet rallied around Bastion's battered orbit. Though the capital lay in ruin, survivors refused to flee. Senators and citizens banded together to rebuild, erecting makeshift shelters beneath the skeletal remains of collapsed skyscrapers. Across the galaxy, hollow transmissions carried the image of Bastion's twin moons, once bright beacons of peace, now pockmarked memorials to fallen lives. Memorial services rang out for those lost, and flags waved on newly erected monuments inscribed with the words, "From darkness we rise." Jedi historians recorded the Galaxy Gun as the perverse apex of Imperial vengeance, a weapon that weaponized hyperspace itself, turning the safest routes between stars into vectors of sudden annihilation. Technical manuals within the Jedi archives now include redacted entries on grave drive sabotage and counter-hyperspace defenses, ensuring no future architect of tyranny repeats Palpatine's horror. And in hidden cells of the Resistance, scavenged Kyber shards from the shattered canisters found new purpose. Embedded in lightsaber hilts, they became symbols of defiance, their faint hum a reminder that even the darkest crystals can be instruments of light. Though the Galaxy Gun's rails remain collapsed beneath the rubble of its final stand, tales of its cosmic spear still echo in the Outer Rim's cantinas and academies. Pilots recount the silent void before its blast. Miners speak of the haunted canyons of Ilum, and scholars warn that true darkness lies not in fleets of destroyers, but in devices that turn the very shortcuts between worlds into harbingers of oblivion. Beneath the ink-black sky of Cormys Station, tendrils of molten metal snaked through orbit, transforming celestial bodies into a grim assembly line of death. These were the world devastators, hollowed husks of starships, each the size of a moon, bristling with refiner arms and smelting cores. They drifted like scavengers across the galaxy, arriving at unsuspecting planets to swallow cities whole and breathe forth legions of TIE fighters from their yawning furnaces. In the dark aftermath of Palpatine's resurrection, the Emperor's will took shape not only in cloned flesh, but in industrial genocide. From the star metal forges of the Ruusan system, a covert fleet of devastators slipped through hyperspace. Each ship had been carved from the wreckage of fallen dreadnoughts and reassembled around hypermatter reactors. Their hulls, layered in heat-forged durasteel, glowed along seam lines with the pulse of refineries consuming ores and life alike. The first world to feel their hunger was Togoria Prime. Its oceans once shimmered beneath twin suns. Now they boiled as molten slag poured from devastator furnaces into the seas. From orbit, the devastators extended dozens of articulated harvesting arms, each tipped with plasma saws and fusion drills. They cut through metropolitan spires as easily as a lightsaber through durasteel, reducing cathedrals and citadels to molten glass. The extracted minerals were funneled through gravity tubes to core reactors, fueling the Devastators' unending appetite. On the surface, resistance fighters scrambled to repel them. Laser batteries burned bright against the encroaching metal behemoths, but their shots peeled harmlessly from reinforced plating. When infantry squadrons dared approach, gravity harpoons fired from Devastator decks dragged battle wagons into refinery moorports for processing. Each jaw-like intake spat out TIE bombers, fresh from the ship's factories, to harry any survivors fleeing across fractured landscapes. The Devastators operated with ruthless efficiency. Automated droid overseers monitored smelting yields, adjusting furnace temperatures to optimize ore extraction and reduce byproduct. Slave labor consoles gleaned every scrap of usable alloy. Even the planet's crust was stripped bare until only barren rock remained. When structural integrity thresholds were reached, the Devastators' thrusters ignited, hurling spent debris into space and moving on to the next system, an unceasing migration of mechanized consumption. But the world Devastators' greatest terror lay in their numbers. Palpatine's design replicated the machine world concept. As each ship harvested, it broadcast construction schematics to inert star metal clusters, converting wreckage into new Devastators. Soon, entire graveyard flotillas of broken hulls stitched themselves into fresh factory ships, swelling the fleet into lethal swarms. Analysts estimated that within a single galactic quarter, dozens of planets could be devoured in the fleet's shadow. In response, the New Republic convened its brightest strategists. Under General Hera Syndulla's command, a daring plan, Operation Ironroot, took shape. Speeder teams infiltrated Devastator recycling bays to plant thermal detonators at structural nexus points. Meanwhile, starfighter squadrons targeted the fleet's command vessels, hoping to decapitate the chain of replication. Their mission culminated in the district of Shay, where the flagship Dominator anchored above a barren world. As gunships raced through molten ash clouds, Syndulla's strike team breached the Dominator's core hangar. They navigated labyrinthine corridors slick with smoldering slag until they found the central command lattice. With seconds to spare, they set explosive charges and exfiltrated into awaiting transports. In orbit, the detonations rippled through the flagship's hull, severing gravity tubes and rupturing refinery conduits. Molten metal cascaded through hull breaches, short-circuiting engines and halting the ship's replication signals. The shockwave reverberated across the fleet. One by one, Devastator engines sputtered, and factory arms fell limp. Star metal clusters drifted inert as the machine worlds lost their breath. In the hushed stillness that followed, the galaxy reclaimed a fragment of hope, knowing it had halted the Emperor's industrial scourge. Yet the world Devastators remain a testament to apocalypse by assembly line. Factories starved of morality, processing life into weapons without conscience. Fragments of their spines still drift in forbidden sectors, and across the outer rim, whisperers claim that the fleet's blueprints survive in Imperial archives, waiting to awaken the next wave of mechanized genocide. As the void-strewn corridors of hyperspace fall silent once more, our course turns back toward Malakor's haunted skies, where the mass shadow generator waits to crush fleets beneath its gravity-laden doom. In the twilight hush above Malakor's shattered surface, a new terror awakens. Rising from fractured bedrock, the mass shadow generator stands as a testament to desperation and ruin, a weapon of gravity spun from the remnants of ancient conflict. Forged in the waning days of the Mandalorian Wars, it was Darth Revan's final gambit, to unleash a crushing vortex that would swallow entire fleets and moons, halting the unstoppable Mandalorian tide with a single, devastating pull. The generator's 4 monolithic pylons stretch skyward, each capped with crystalline capacitors, infused with the tortured echoes of fallen Jedi and Mandalorians. These crystals, ragged shards of crimson glass, were harvested from deep beneath Malakor's surface, where tectonic upheaval had fractured the planet's ley line nexus. When activated, the pylons resonate in perfect harmony with those ley lines, drawing upon Malakor's very mass. A low hum ripples through space as the device siphons gravity itself, channeling it into an ever-tightening artificial well. Stars for light, ships for steel, everything within range succumbs to its silent, inescapable draw. As the Republic fleet gathered above the planet's horizon, Admiral Saul Karath marked the moment with a flick of his wrist. Venator-class star destroyers and accompanying frigates drifted into position, their deflector shields shimmering against the violet glow emanating from the surface. Behind them, squadrons of A-Wings and Z-95s held position, engines idling as their crews checked targeting sensors. Then, without warning, the generator pulsed. Hulls groaned as unseen forces pressed inward, sensors warped under the strain of phantom gravity. Cruisers tilted on trembling keels, fighters found their flight controls slumping, and heavy transports began to descend toward the planet, as if the sky itself were collapsing. Far below, Jedi General Mitra Surik, known to many as the Exile, felt the weapons awakening through the Force. Across miles of glassed plains, where rivers of molten glass mingled with fissures of cobalt steam, she led a strike team toward the generator's base. Each step toward the pylons felt like wading through treacle. Gravity tugged at boots and lungs alike. Her lightsaber, an azure beacon in the encroaching gloom, seared through drifting ash as she pressed on. Behind her, veteran Jedi and allied Mandalorian warriors staggered under the invisible weight. But Surik's resolve never wavered. Above, the gravity vortex tightened. Mandalorian dreadnoughts slipped helplessly from orbit, dragged inexorably toward the crushing maw at Malakor's heart. Ionic storms of neon blue and violet danced around the pylons, feeding off the swirling mass of debris and energy. Republic engineers orbited in corvettes, desperately attempting to reroute power to secondary thrusters or fire tractor beams. But it was as futile as attempting to stop a collapsing star with bare hands. Inside the generator's central control chamber, Surik confronted a ring of Sith acolytes chanting in a tongue older than the Republic itself. They stood around the Heartstone, a vast conductor of dark side energy, its surface etched with runes that pulsed in time with the sharpening vortex. Hololithic displays flickered with gravitic field equations, each projection warning of imminent planetary collapse. With a fierce cry, Surik ignited her lightsaber, its brilliant light clashing with the dances of shadow as she unleashed a concentrated wave of light side energy. The chamber shuddered, glyphs sparking as the Force rippled outward in her wake. But even her power seemed minute compared to the generator's inexorable pull. As the Jedi elite struggled against the chamber's gravitational might, the station's pylons shivered. Surik realized that brute force alone would not suffice. Drawing deep from the living force, she opened herself entirely, becoming a conduit of pure light. In one final sacrificial act, she channeled every ounce of her life force into the Heartstone, shattering its crystalline capacitors in a wave of blinding white energy. Outside, the pylons convulsed. Crystalline veins cracked like ice under pressure, ejecting shards that sparked against the molten plains below. The artificial gravity well, severed at its source, collapsed inward in on itself. With a thunderous implosion, the vortex inverted, flinging debris and wrecked warships back into space, where drifting escape pods and torn fighters bobbed like wounded fish. Beacons flickered on freed Republic vessels as they regained control, their crews awed by the sudden release of unimaginable forces. When the light finally faded, Mitra Surik lay collapsed on the chamber floor, her strength spent and her connection to the Force dimming. Her companions gathered around, supporting her as they surveyed the ruined control nexus. Above them, the sky cleared. Stars once again shone without distortion, the natural order restored, if only for a moment. In the aftermath, Republic forces combed the glassed plains and cratered valleys for survivors, tending to the wounded and honoring the fallen. Mandalorian remnants, those few who survived the generator's fury, surrendered or fled into the unknown regions, their hunger for conquest finally broken. On every vessel, word spread of Surik's sacrifice, the exile who had faced the darkness of Malachor and emerged victorious at the cost of her own life's spark. Historians would later record the mass shadow generator as a turning point in galactic history, a collision of ancient sorcery and modern warfare that nearly unmade a planet. Its skeletal pylons, now half buried in Malachor's glassed plains, stand as silent sentinels to the weapon's ferocity. Jedi holocrons preserve the story in hushed entries, warning future generations that gravity itself can be twisted into a weapon of unfathomable cruelty, and that the bonds between living worlds and the Force can be both a source of power and a potential prison. Over time, the ruins of the generator became a pilgrimage site for scholars and sages who walked among its broken pylons, seeking to understand the balance between creation and destruction. Some spoke of lingering echoes in the Force, where the souls trapped within the shattered capacitors still murmured of war and the price of desperation. Others warned that the blueprints for the mass shadow generator were buried deep in Sith tombs, potentially waiting for another dark side zealot to rekindle its terrible engines. But for now, as starlight returns to Malachor's fractured skies, the galaxy's eye turns outward once more. Beyond these ruins lie darker nightmares yet, devices that rend space itself and unmake the pathways between worlds. The story of the mass shadow generator endures as both a caution and a promise that even the gravest threats can be undone, so long as courage, unity, and the light of the Force endure. In the silent void beyond Imperial space, a silhouette appears against distant stars, a blade of night formed from blackened durasteel. This is the Eclipse-class dreadnought, Palpatine's ultimate contingency, conceived in the cold crucible of legends. Stretching nearly 18 kilometers from prow to stern, its hull mass eclipsed even the Executor class, and along its spine lay an axial superlaser, less powerful than a Death Star's beam, yet capable of cleaving through planetary crusts and capital ship hulls alike. When the New Republic dared to claim victory over Palpatine's heirs, whispers of a hidden flagship circulated in the Outer Rim. In the depths of Kuat's lost shipyards, the Eclipse was completed under shrouded command. Its black hull absorbed light, rendering it nearly invisible against starfields until it chose to reveal itself. On its first deployment, the dreadnought slipped into the Rendar Nebula, emerging only to strike at the remote mining colony of Tur Fenir. A single shot from its superlaser gouged a canyon 50 kilometers wide into the planet's ice, vaporizing entire cities in a flash of emerald fire. Aboard the vessel, Admiral Dala observed the destruction through reinforced viewports, her gauntlet-clad hand resting on the targeting console. She commanded the superlaser with icy precision, each firing cycle lasting but 2 seconds, yet delivering a 100-megaton blast and heat exceeding 500,000 degrees Celsius. Below her, bridge officers watched terrain evaporate under converging beams, their faces pale reflections in the glass. When the second volley struck, Ter Fenir's surface quaked and crumbled, its atmosphere igniting into storm-tossed plumes of feverish light. Beyond planetary assault, the Eclipse class excelled at cosmic domination. Equipped with 10 gravity well projectors, it could trap entire squadrons in real space, preventing hyperspace jumps or escapes. Its complement of 1,050 heavy turbolasers, 100 ion cannons, and 200 point defense batteries made approaching ships feel like flies before a predator. Aboard its massive hangars, capable of housing an Imperial-class dreadnought, 600 TIE interceptors and 96 TIE bombers launched sorties in dark wings of vengeance. Yet the dreadnought's true purpose remained self-revelatory, a psychological instrument of terror. Its very name, Eclipse, signified obliteration of hope. Worlds whispered its approach as the Black Dawn, a coming storm that extinguished resistance before it could call for reinforcements. Rebel intelligence flagged its presence near Corellia, prompting evacuation orders that saved lives, but ceded the planet to the dreadnought's wrath. In one notorious engagement, the Eclipse faced down the battered remnants of a New Republic task force near Bastion. As Mon Calamari cruisers and strike corvettes launched volley after volley, their ordnance fizzled against the Eclipse's 7 layers of Om-time shielding. Desperate to blind the behemoth, Y-wing squadrons flew kamikaze runs to overload its shield generators. Dozens perished in fiery spirals, but their sacrifice bought the fleet time to evacuate civilians from the capital's orbit. The crowning moment of the Eclipse's legacy came during the Dark Empire revolt, when Palpatine himself returned in cloned flesh. He used the dreadnought to puncture the New Republic's final bastion on Thyfera. Above the planet's hydroponic moon, the superlaser's concentric rings formed a spiral that gouged a molten ribbon across fertile plains, snuffing out the blood of galactic medicine in an act of clinical annihilation. Yet every fortress bears a flaw. In a daring covert operation, a rebel saboteur cell infiltrated the Eclipse under the cover of ash clouds on Merca. They navigated maintenance tunnels to reach the gyro stabilization matrix beneath the superlaser's barrel. With synchronized charges, they disrupted the beam's phase alignment mid-firing, causing the spiral beam to collapse inward. The dreadnought convulsed as its axial laser overloaded, sparks arcing across its prow. Its main reactor surged, and in a convulsive roar, the Eclipse detached its bridge tower and spiraled into the planet's atmosphere, burning like a shooting star. In the aftermath, survivors recounted the dreadnought's final screams echoing through the void as it disintegrated. Rebel archives preserved hollow recordings of its last moments, a black silhouette crowned in flame, plummeting toward a world it once dominated. Though many pieces of its hull drifted in debris fields, the fear it inspired endured in holocrons and war colleges alike. The Eclipse-class dreadnought remains a monument to Palpatine's hubris, an armada distilled into a single ship, wielding power once thought reserved for orbital superweapons. Its axial beam, gravity traps, and legions of starfighters set the bar for dreadnought supremacy, even as its destruction proved that defiance could unravel the mightiest fantasies of vengeance. From the dreadnought's siege beams to the Empire's green light terror, we now turn to Death Star 1, where a single shot defined a galactic rebellion. A pale green glow blossoms across the void as the Death Star's superlaser ignites, a blade of pure energy poised to cleave a world in two. Suspended above the core worlds, this moon-sized battle station drifts like a celestial guillotine. Its dish-shaped emitter array, over a kilometer across, gleams like a war-forged eye, scanning the galaxy beneath. Conceived as the Galactic Empire's ultimate terror weapon, Death Star 1 harnessed multiple hypermatter reactors, feeding compound kyber crystals to focus 8 tributary beams into one planet-shattering blast. Deep within the station's belly, corridors thrummed with activity as maintenance crews calibrated the superlaser's synchronization chambers. Technicians in white overalls monitored plasma conduit pressures, while Black Ops operatives secured sensitive sections where the kyber crystals sat in vibration-damped containment fields. Every component had been tested to micrometer precision. Any misalignment, however slight, could disperse the beams and render the weapon impotent. In the command tower, Grand Moff Tarkin paced before a panoramic viewport, flanked by senior officers. His cold voice crackled over the comm. "Fire at will." He watched as energy rippled through the station, flowing from reactor cores through Nexus conduits to the immense focusing lens. Above the peaceful blue world of Alderaan, tension crackled through the planet's orbital defense network. A handful of Republic cruisers and frigates raced to intercept. Their cadet crews hoped to stall the station's advance long enough for evacuation. But no shield matrix on any world, no matter how vast, could withstand the Death Star's focused beam. Tarkin's demonstration would be absolute. Submission, he believed, the only path to peace. In the superlaser chamber, 8 tributary beams, each the width of a starfighter, spiraled inward like jeweled tentacles, before coalescing into a single column of lethal radiance. Stormtroopers manned peripheral turbolasers, trained to protect against boarding parties, but powerless against the weapon at the station's core. The airlock doors sealed with pneumatic hiss as the beam's feed lines groaned under escalating power. In the observation gallery, Colonel Yularen noted with detached precision, "Firing solutions locked. Target, Alderaan. Coordinates confirmed." A single lever depressed, and the station trembled. On Alderaan's surface, the sky split with impossible light. From the icy polar caps to equatorial plains, mountains fractured, seas bubbled into steam, and cities, spired monuments of art and culture, turned to molten rivers. The blast wave moved faster than sound, ripping through the atmosphere and vaporizing everything in its path. In one silent heartbeat, Alderaan bloomed into a violet starburst before collapsing inward to a final subdued glow. Back on the Death Star, Tarkin observed the spectacle with a thin smile of triumph. "Evacuation futile," he declared. "Let the galaxy witness the price of rebellion." At that moment, Darth Vader materialized at his side, cloak billowing in the artificial breeze of the station's ventilation systems. The Dark Lord's masked visage betrayed only a slow nod of approval. Where Tarkin saw tactical dominance, Vader saw an opportunity to crush lingering hope in every system that dared to rise against the Emperor. Word of Alderaan's destruction spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Rebel cells, hidden in the outer rim and beyond, erupted in a mix of horror and rage. Transmission relays picked up fragmented messages. Alderaan is gone. Millions dead. Horror beyond imagining. In hidden bunkers, young recruits wept as they realized their cause had gone from survival to vengeance. Mon Mothma's impassioned address crackled across encrypted channels. "A new era begins. We stand undaunted." Meanwhile, within the rebel base on Yavin 4, Leia Organa pressed stolen schematics into Luke Skywalker's hands. "This is our chance," she said, eyes burning with grief and determination. Engineers and pilots pored over the vulnerability, the tiny thermal exhaust port leading directly to the main reactor. It was a flaw engineered for efficiency, never intended to be exploited. Yet destiny, channeled through the Force, revealed that smallest of weaknesses. In the hangar, Red Squadron pilots prepared their X-Wings for the trench run. R2-D2's dome whirred as he uploaded final targeting data. Wedge Antilles checked his torpedoes. Garvin Dryce studied approach vectors. Each pilot internalized the gravity of their mission. The Death Star's turbolasers erupted around them like hail, but the force of hope drove them forward. The trench, a narrow equatorial canyon scarring the station's surface, stretched below like a maze of steel and fire. As the battle raged, Tarkin ordered interception wave after wave of TIE fighters. Swarms of screaming starfighters converged on the rebel formation, their staccato laser blasts tearing holes in comrade hulls. But Luke, guided by visions from the Force, saw beyond the chaos. "Stay on target," his voice crackled. "Just one shot." With Han Solo's diversion in the Millennium Falcon, a proton torpedo breached the port and detonated within the reactor's vulnerable core. Inside the Death Star, alarms shrieked as the structure convulsed. Hollow projectors flickered, gravity wells fluctuated, decks buckled. Tarkin's veneer of control fractured as he screamed, "Shut it down! Shut it down!" But it was too late. The reactors, overloaded and spiraling out of sync, tore the station from within. A crescendo of tearing metal and roaring energy echoed through the corridors as oxidation grenades and emergency bulkheads sealed off doomed sectors. In a brilliant fireball that outshone distant stars, the Death Star fractured along its midsection. Segments of hull twisted in zero-G before drifting apart like warped petals. The superlaser dish, once a symbol of unstoppable force, cracked and collapsed into the void. Thousands of stormtroopers and officers, caught in the breach, were flung into the inky black or consumed by the blast. On Yavin 4, the rebel base erupted in cheers as skyward sensors lit up with the station's final convulsions. Leia wept openly, relief and sorrow mingling on her cheeks. Luke stared at the hollow display, silent. Around him, engineers culled data from surviving logs, proof that even the greatest weapon had succumbed to cunning, courage, and the mysterious will of the Force. In the war rooms of Imperial Command, shock and disbelief reigned. Palpatine's doctrine of fear had backfired. His masterstroke returned to haunt him. Tarkin's name was uttered in hushed anger, and Vader's return to the dark side palace carried the weight of unforeseen consequences. Historians debate whether any other regime ever wielded terror on such a scale. Yet none deny the Death Star Wang's place as the original apex of galactic annihilation, a testament that even a weapon of moon-shattering power carries within it the seed of its own destruction. And as the stars reclaim the space once occupied by that monstrous station, the galaxy turns its gaze to the half-built moon looming over Endor, whispering of traps yet to be sprung. Emperor Palpatine's second superweapon was more than a moon-sized battle station. It was a trap forged from hubris and technological refinement, designed to lure the rebellion into a final, fatal engagement above Endor. Unlike its predecessor, the Death Star II boasted advanced cooling circulators spun from hypersteel alloys and rapid recharge conduits that funneled reactor output into power cells in mere minutes. Its designers had eliminated the original's infamous thermal exhaust port and revamped the main power lines with redundant pathways, ensuring that no single hit could cripple the station's firing systems. Concealed beneath a latticework of unfinished hull plating and skeletal girders, this mobile battle station stood half-built, its equatorial trench already bristling with turret emplacements even as construction shuttles scuttled about. At its apex loomed Palpatine's personal isolation citadel, a 100-story spire crowned with obsidian glass windows, modeled after Coruscant's imperial palace. where the Sith Lord would watch and orchestrate the coming conflict. Under the codename Second Son, Moff Tian Jerjerrod oversaw a secret hyperspace supply lane from Sulust to the forest moon of Endor, stripping resources from a dozen downtrodden systems to accelerate construction. Industrial sprawl covered Sulust's surface with foundries and refineries working around the clock. Slag-cast conduits, Kyber matrix capacitors, and hypermatter injector pods rolled off orbital slipstreams. Director Krennic's legacy lived on in the station's superlaser dish, an array of 7 tributary beams circling a central, more powerful emitter, all converging into a single jade shaft of annihilation. This redesign allowed not only the destruction of planets, but also precision strikes on moving capital ships, enabled by vector compensation servos and real-time targeting arrays, making the station a versatile scourge. Once the Emperor completed final tests of the superlaser, he leaked word of the station's existence to the Alliance, confident that their desperation would draw them into Endor's orbit. Hidden beneath towering redwoods and protected by humming shield generators powered by auxiliary generators, rebel teams from Echo Base scrambled to assemble an assault force. Scouts and saboteurs trained under General Leia Organa's stern command, rehearsing the sabotage of shield pylons and the placement of thermal detonators along the generator's power grid. Above them, a massive Imperial fleet of Star Destroyers and TIE squadrons formed a near impenetrable screen. On the fateful morning, a shudder ran through the moon as Jerjerrod's command center announced, "All systems online, my lord." Palpatine's voice crackled through the comm. "Commence the display of strength." Rebel sensors registered a flicker in the generator's shield matrix, and Han Solo's team made their move. Under the canopy of Endor's redwoods, partisans fought through stormtrooper patrols while indigenous Ewok braves, spurred by Mon Mothma's plea, toppled shield pylons with logs, nets, and courage born of desperation. In the commotion, Leia's strike unit breached the shield control bunker and collided with Krennic's backup troopers in a fierce firefight. Meanwhile, in orbit, Admiral Akbar's calm voice cut through the din of alarms. "The shield is down. Commence attack." At his signal, squadrons of X-Wings, A-Wings, and Y-Wings roared from makeshift launch rings, weaving through salvos of turbo laser fire from the second Death Star's defensive batteries. Lando Calrissian, in the command seat of the Millennium Falcon, led the vanguard, expertly dodging tracer bolts and reenacting the run that had felled the first station. Wedge Antilles and Gold Squadron flanked him, threading proton torpedoes into the narrow trench beneath the superlaser dish. Each pilot fought through blasts that cleaved chunks from the station's hull, turbulence whipping their ships in spirals of flame. Inside that trench, tension peaked as converging green beams hummed in the distance. In a synchronized ballet of flame and metal, the torpedoes found the exposed reactor shaft, an Achilles heel deliberately left uncovered to accommodate final assembly shuttles. A ripple of fiery orange blossomed along the station's core conduits, climbing the trench walls in a cascade of molten light. Corridors shuddered as power surges backfed into auxiliary systems, triggering warning klaxons across the superstructure. High above, Palpatine's citadel trembled. Moff Jerjerrod's voice cracked through the intercom. "My lord, the core is breached." But before the Sith Lord could respond, the station groaned under the mounting pressure. Inside the reactor chamber, containment fields collapsed one by one. Plasma vents ruptured, sending geysers of scintillating energy into observation galleries. Decks buckled, and the skeletal hull flexed dangerously as if the station itself were tearing in two. Suddenly, in a thunderous roar that echoed across space, the Death Star II split along its equator. Both halves rotated outward, cleaved by the reactor's own heart. In a final act of cosmic irony, the newly independent North and South poles drifted apart, each fragment hurtling toward the methane seas of Endor's moon. Firestorms engulfed the moon's orbit, and debris fields spun into arcs of fiery wreckage that lit the sky like auroras of destruction. Below, Ewoks howled in celebration as crimson embers rained down. On board the fleeing rebel flotilla, pilots cheered through smoke-filled cockpits, tears of relief mingling with adrenaline. Leia's comm crackled with Han's triumphant laugh. "We did it!" The forest moon trembled with the realization that the Tyrant's greatest siege engine lay broken at their feet. Despite the station's incomplete state, its point defense batteries, numbering 15,000 heavy turbolasers, 15,000 medium turbolasers, 7,500 laser cannons, and 5,000 ion cannons, had decimated wave after wave of rebel assault ships before its ruin. The ground beneath Endor's redwoods was littered with the twisted frames of ATSTs and fallen troopers. Yet through determination and daring, primitive bravery had toppled Imperial might. The Death Star II's destruction echoed across the galaxy as both a triumph of heroism and a testament to Imperial overreach. Scholar D. Gemero later wrote that Palpatine's overconfidence, believing the station's incomplete shell and concealed vulnerabilities would go unnoticed, became its undoing. The Empire's greatest siege engine collapsed under the very tactics it sought to preempt, proving that even the most fearsome superweapon could not extinguish the spark of resistance. In the aftermath, both halves of the battle station floated as entwined wrecks, visible from orbit for decades and serving as grim monuments to tyranny and rebellion alike. Imperial records buried the lessons of Endor deep within classified holocrons, while rebel historians preserved them as cautionary lore. No matter the scale of destruction, the Force and hope could always find a way to prevail. From the skeletal moon of Imperial hubris, we now ascend to the cosmic fury of the Sun Crusher, where seismic bombs collapse stars into supernovas. A silvery vessel drifts through the Maaw's phosphorescent gravity wells, its hull nearly invisible against the backdrop of deadly, orbiting black holes. This is the Sun Crusher, the Empire's clandestine terror, its sleek, spidery frame no larger than a cockpit. Yet, within its heart, glows 11 seismic resonance torpedoes capable of igniting a sun into a supernova. Forged in secret at the Maw installation under Grand Moff Tarkin's covert directive, the Sun Crusher's crystalline armor, stronger than any known composite, could shrug off even a Death Star's superlaser blast, ensuring its payload reached any target unimpeded. Legend holds that only the Maaw's shifting gravity wells and hyperspatial currents could conceal a vessel of such apocalyptic might until the right moment arrived. Hidden within a camouflaged hangar carved into a floating asteroid, the Crusher remained unseen by scouts and unrecorded in Imperial logs. Its existence known only to a handful of admirals and the shadowy cabal that oversaw the installation. When Admiral Natasi Da'ala assumed command after Tarkin's death, she uncovered the Crusher's schematic holocrons and secretly ordered their assembly, erasing all records of its construction from the Imperial archives. The weapon's true activation occurred a decade later, on the eve of the New Jedi Order's rise. Keep Doron, a promising student at Luke Skywalker's fledgling academy, fell prey to the lingering spirit of Exar Kun. Whispered promises of vengeance and power lured the young Jedi to the Crusher's hidden lair. In the cavernous launch bay, flanked by dormant starfighters repurposed as gun platforms, Kip approached the command console. Sensors flared to life as he initiated the first torpedo launch sequence, a sequence that would echo across the galaxy in crimson devastation. The first star to fall was Carida, home to the Empire's primary officer training academy. In the tense silence before impact, the Crusher slipped into Carida's sunlit system like a ghost. Kip guided the ship down the coronal veil, the torpedo's external sensors breaching the photosphere before detonating in a cascade of nuclear fusion. The star's surface ruptured in a riot of flame. Nova plumes of crimson and gold roared outward, obliterating warships and vaporizing the planet's defensive grid. Miles-high shockwaves of plasma shredded orbital factories, while lingering energy filaments danced through the wreckage like furious serpents. Across the core worlds, Imperial bridge crews watched in horror as their instrument panels blinked from green to amber to red. Each no life signs detected reading punctuated by the screech of alarm klaxons. On Coruscant, the Emperor's mausoleum trembled. On Dak, the ocean cities flickered on and off like dying lights. The Crusher's toll was swift and absolute. No escape pods, no survivors, only the blackened husk of a once vibrant sun. As news of Carida's fate spread, the New Republic and the fledgling Resistance trembled at the knowledge that a single star-killing strike could decimate core worlds in an instant. Desperate for answers, Han Solo and Chewbacca embarked on a reconnaissance mission. Slipping through hyperspace anomalies and combing through wreckage fields of destroyed satellites, they pieced together fragments of Imperial communication and a half-burned schematic that named the Sun Crusher at last. Their mission became twofold: intercept Kip Daron and rescue Luke Skywalker, whom the Academy feared had been captured in Daron's spiral of betrayal. Navigating the breaker-riddled debris of the Maw installation's orbital platforms, Han's battered freighter, now loaded with jerry-rigged jamming gear and tenacious hope, shuddered under intermittent cannon fire from patrolling derelicts. Chewbacca's bowcaster roared in defiant bursts, felling security droids as they clawed at the hull. Their path led them through the cold, wind-swept corridors of an asteroid fortress, lit only by flickering red emergency lights and the distant staccato of exploding power conduits. Inside the Crusher's narrow control nexus, Kip's descent into darkness was nearly complete. Exar Kun's apparition, coalescing from swinging cables and smoke, hovered behind him, its twin eyes aflame with cruel instruction. Kip's hands trembled as he calibrated the second torpedo's targeting array toward Sixella, where a hidden rebel outpost harbored the Resistance's codebreakers. The hypermatter reactor's core vented in plumes of cerulean flame, and the ship's cooling ducts groaned under the strain of imminent cataclysm. Han and Chewbacca burst through the blast doors in a hail of laser bolts. Chewie's roar shattered silence as he downed the first line of security droids, while Han sprinted to the targeting console. Sparks flew as he jammed circuitry with an electromagnetic disruptor, an improvised device he'd built from salvaged starfighter components. The torpedo's guidance unit sparked, and the targeting vectors shifted, sending the resonance warhead careening harmlessly into the Maw's shifting void. Alarm klaxons transitioned to urgent growls as core containment fields overloaded. The resulting feedback cascade echoed through the reactor's manifold in a thunderous wail. Lights dimmed, then went out entirely, replaced by the blinding flash of reactor rupture. White-hot plasma tore through the ship's crystalline hull, slicing the Sun Crusher in half with indifferent precision. Released from its crystalline cage, the hypermatter reactor collapsed, triggering a chain reaction detonation that rolled through the remaining torpedo bays like dominoes. Explosive shockwaves carved the vessel from within, fracturing its armor into a kaleidoscope of lethal shards. The Sun Crusher, once invulnerable to any external assault, plunged helplessly into the Maw's gravitational maelstrom. There, twisted by tides of dark gravity, its fractured hull finally succumbed to nature's cruel design, shearing the crusher into cosmic splinters that drifted away like silent specters. In the aftermath, drifting fragments of crystalline armor and shattered resonance torpedoes littered the Maaw's silent corridors. Each fragment hummed briefly with residual energy before falling dormant, an eerie chorus of the crusher's final breaths. The holocrons containing its schematics were sealed under triple wardings in the Jedi archives, their contents buried beneath layers of light-side encryption to ensure no future soul could resurrect the weapon's awful promise. The Sun Crusher's legacy endures as a paradox. The smallest vessel ever capable of star-scale annihilation, yet vulnerable to a single act of defiance. Its chain reaction of supernovas, unrivaled in scale, underscores the fragility of unchecked ambition. In every whispered caution among pilot crews and holocron scholars, its name carries both awe and warning. A stark reminder that true power often blooms in shadow and can be undone by the lightest spark of rebellion. We now descend from this tale of stellar horror to the cosmic crucibles that forge entire armies from the fires of binary suns, the Star Forge, where creation itself becomes the galaxy's most fearsome weapon. A crimson nebula coils around the skeletal silhouette of a titanic space station, its form half hidden in the swirling stellar haze. The Starforge stands as an altar to Sith ambition, a monument of black steel and red-hot plasma, born from a fusion of ancient Rakatan alchemy and the cold logic of war. Here, raw stellar energy is transmuted into armadas before they ever touch vacuum's chill. Long before the rise of the Empire, Darth Revan journeyed beyond Republic charts, lured by whispers of a superweapon that could turn galaxies into legions. Guided by equal parts curiosity and the dark side's hunger, he found the Forge orbiting two dying suns, their light siphoned through kilometer-wide collectors into glowing conduits of obsidian steel. From those conduits, reactors forged by ancient celestials funneled solar fire into crucibles where super alloys fused with dark side catalysts, yielding metal that pulsed with the heartbeat of stars. At the forge's core, a spinning lattice of crystalline kyber conduits captured every photon and redirected it into assembly bays where automated arms sculpted warships with preternatural speed. Droids, millions of them, labored in rhythmic unison, their joints slick with starlit oil, weaving hull frames and installing turbolasers that gleamed like sharpened teeth beneath binary suns. Under Revan's cloak, each vessel took shape as a titan, prow carved into the visage of Sith avatars, hangar bays yawning like the maws of leviathans, engines glowing with the promise of conquest. Great walls of force-hardened alloy rose in concentric rings, and corridors lined with glyph-etched columns hummed with dark energy as maintenance servitors crawled along conduits, calibrating magnetic fields to exacting tolerances. Revan stood upon a balcony of fused durasteel and darkstone, his presence a shadow among titanic structures. With every ship launched, he felt the force weave through the forge, each new dreadnought an extension of his will. Holocrons recorded his designs, strategic patterns, fleet formations, the arc of conquest, encoded into every ship's navigational circuits. Calculations performed in real time by Sith-infused processors ensured that each vessel emerged calibrated for maximum lethality, from gravity well projectors that could imprison entire fleets to ion arrays powerful enough to disable planetary defenses in a single volley. Yet even as its forges roared, the forge exacted its toll. The twin suns' orbits faltered under its prodigious appetite, their coronas dimming as they fed groaning reactors. Nearby systems reeled from aberrant gravity wells. Navigators spoke of collapsing subspace eddies that tore vessels from hyperspace and spat them like flotsam into real space. Cosmic storms of plasma and ash swirled around the forge, painting the station in flickering hues of violet and black. The stellar collectors, once pristine mirrors of light, became warped and scarred, their surfaces pitted by solar flares amplified through Sith alchemy. Efforts to destroy it met failure. Republic fleets, Star Destroyers and Mon Calamari cruisers in concert, assaulted its outer defenses, hoping to blind its collectors or cripple its forges. Instead, ion cannons seared through incoming volleys, and gravity grids ensnared capital ships, dragging them into disintegration fields. Boarding parties slipped through shields under the cover of electromagnetic storms, but gravity traps and plasma vents turned corridors into death traps, slicing through armor and vaporizing bone in roaring jets of thermal energy. Every time a hull breach was patched, the forge simply redirected power from its collectors and regrew shield arrays with uncanny speed. In the end, only the Force could still its forges. A clandestine coalition of Jedi strike teams and Mandalorian commandos, skeptical allies bound by desperate necessity, slipped beneath the forge's gravitic halo on cloaked boarding craft. They moved like shadows through maintenance shafts, lit only by the glow of leaking plasma, evading patrol droids and deactivating turret emplacements that hummed with hungry energy. Their mission? To plant kinetic anchors at the reactor pylons deep within the station's core, devices engineered to resonate with the forge's crystalline lattice and shatter its conduits. As the anchors armed, the forge's myriad sensors detected only whispers, ghost readings in sensor logs dismissed as spatial anomalies. Then, beneath the cathedral-like forges, a tremor ran through the station as the saboteurs triggered their charges. In a single, harmonic cascade, conduits of pure kyber crystal fractured, sending iridescent shards cascading into molten flows. The arches of obsidian conduits snapped like brittle bones, and arcs of raw photon energy snaked through ruptured veins, igniting raw plasma pockets in every chamber. The station convulsed as unleashed energy tore through festooned arms. Crimson plumes blasted into space where hull plating buckled and exploded. In a thundercrack that echoed across two dying suns, the Starforge's main lattice ruptured, each reactor core detonating in a controlled implosion that simultaneously consumed its own structure and drove armadas of half-born warships into oblivion. Vessels still tethered to assembly gantries were sucked into the blast, their hulls collapsing into sprawling ribbons of molten steel. As molten metal rained into the dying suns, the forge's remains, twisted girders and shattered kyber shards, drifted as cosmic driftwood, relics of power unmoored from purpose. The twin stars, freed from the forge's ravenous maw, collapsed into supernovae mere hours later, their final bursts painting the station's shattered hull in blinding white light before fading into silence. In the aftermath, the void was filled with drifting debris fields that stretched for light years, each fragment a testament to both genius and madness. Revan himself vanished into the shadows of legend. Some say he surrendered his memories to the Force, others that he fled to unknown regions, destined to shape new histories. Whatever his fate, the Forge's legacy endures. Half-forgotten dreadnoughts ghosting through the outer rim, their systems dormant yet ever hungry for power. Scholars debate whether any fragment survives in hidden caches, but none deny the Forge's grim lesson. Creation, when bound to unchecked ambition, can become the greatest weapon of all. In midnight, holocrons and fading data caches, its story endures. A whispered caution that even the pure light of stars can be forged into engines of domination. And as the nebula's glow fades, the galaxy's eye turns once more to darker nightmares, where even planetary behemoths bow to the might of stellar hunger. A low, humming vibration runs beneath Ilum's frozen surface as the planet's great collector arrays come online, their rib-like fins unfurling against the night sky like mechanical talons. Carved into the icy crust of the ancient Jedi world, Starkiller Base is more a monster than a station. A planet hollowed and reforged into a living engine of mass destruction. Its designers drilled miles into the heart of the planet, tapping into veins of glittering kyber crystal that pulse with the same resonance once used to forge lightsabers. Around the equator, a trench-spanning emitter aperture yawns under the glare of floodlights, waiting to unleash a beam capable of shattering solar cores. Far above, hidden rocket thrusters tuck beneath the ice, awaiting orders to hoist the planet from its orbit and bear it through hyperspace toward its next victim. General Hux's command chamber ripples with blue hollow projections as officers watch the Hosnian system blaze bright on their displays. They speak in clipped voices of recharge cycles measured in days, of thermal oscillators cooled by sacrificial coolant transfers, and of shield generators forged from alloyed kyber matrices, technology stolen from Jedi legends, reborn in a crucible of spite. At the quarterdeck windows, Captain Phasma's chrome helm reflects the latticed ice walls, her stance unyielding as she prepares to oversee one more demonstration of First Order might. Down on the surface, snow-blasted maintenance tunnels echo with the clang of marching stormtroopers and the hiss of sub-zero airlocks. The air is thin, so teams of engineers press their helmets close to conduit panels, rerouting coolant lines and adjusting magnetic harmonics in the kyber arrays. Each splice of the crystal conduits demands precision to the micron. One misaligned shard could shatter under the reactor's immense power and sabotage the entire beam. Yet on this night, under orders from the Supreme Leader, they work with grim determination. Theirs is a mission of pure annihilation. When the moment arrives, the silence cracks like ice underfoot. Power banks flow with harvested starlight, siphoned through gravity well projectors from the distant sun. The trench's emitter coils glow emerald, then white-hot, as tributary currents converge in a lightning-fast choreography. In the control bunkers, Admiral Holdo issues the command, "Fire!" At once, the trench erupts in a pillar of blinding green light, folding space as the beam arcs in a perfect parabola toward hyperspace. Across light years, the Hosnian planets register the assault too late. Their cores flare into supernovae, each world blooming into a fiery blossom before imploding into drifting debris. On Hosnian Prime, the inaugural demonstration sends the New Republic Senate's spires toppling in fiery shreds. On Gatalenta and Runa, cities vaporize in silent convulsions. The synchronized annihilation leaves a trio of ghostly remnants, barely visible like embers against the void. Back on Ilum, the base trembles as its coolant reserves deplete, and officers record success with calculated applause. But triumph turns to caution when sensors detect a ripple in the force, a disturbance born not of technology, but of courage. Resistance pilots under Poe Dameron's command have tracked the planet's signature, massing for a counterstrike. As dawn-hued flares skirt the horizon, the Resistance makes its move. Han Solo and Chewbacca emerge from their stolen shuttle, trudging through waist-deep snow toward a concealed maintenance shaft. Finn, still haunted by memories of betrayal, guides them past automated sentry guns and through a tangle of collapsed corridors. Their objective? The planetary shield generator nestled in an ice cavern, its crystalline antennae reaching skyward like skeletal fingers. Inside, Leia's ground team dismantles power relays in seconds, collapsing the shield's integrity and opening the way for X-Wing attack runs. Above, Poe's squadron dives into the unprotected trench, weavers of defiance among flak-spitting turbo lasers. Guided by Ray's force-infused intuition, they thread proton torpedoes into the thermal oscillator's intake valves, lines meant to temper the hypercharged reactor. With each torpedo strike, the oscillator shudders, magnetic seals screaming. The collected starlight, no longer contained, surges back into the planet's core, igniting subterranean veins of pyroplasm. Ilum groans like a dying beast, its ice shell cracking as rivers of molten metal surge through the fissures. Below decks, alarms converge into a cacophony as the base's systems collapse one by one. Hux's holoprojector flickers as the recharge timeline spirals out of control. Phasma's chrome plating cracks from thermal stress, and the tunnel walls buckle. Then, in an unholy crescendo, the planet ruptures. The trench explodes inward rather than outward, a reverse supernova that consumes machinery and ice alike. Stormtroopers and officers alike are thrown into the void by the concussive blast, their screams swallowed by the void. When the dust settles, Ilum is no more. In its place drifts a smouldering fragment of rock, ringed by shards of kyber crystal, each shard humming with residual energy before falling silent. The Resistance watches from afar as the remains spiral toward a distant star, a broken testament to both hubris and heroism. Leia's voice, calm yet charged with relief, orders ships to move on, to honor the victory, but guard against complacency. For the galaxy has borne witness. When ambition fuses ancient lore with modern engineering, the result is a weapon of unimaginable power, but one whose undoing lies in its single, fragile heart. In the shadowy annals of Sith history, the Nameless Void engine stands as a testament to the dark side's boundless ambition. Conceived through forbidden rites on worlds long lost to memory, this superweapon was designed not merely to conquer, but to erase entire star systems from existence. It was neither fortress nor fleet, but a ritualistic construct as old as the first whispers of the dark side. Its activation an unholy ceremony that would rend the very fabric of space itself. Legends say that the engine's architects belonged to a secret cabal of Sith alchemists who delved into the most blasphemous depths of the Force. They gathered on a dead world under skies devoid of light to forge a device that would give shape to their worst nightmares. The engine's core was built around a heartstone, a crystalline lattice infused with concentrated hatred and despair, its facets carved into twisting glyphs that seemed to shift and writhe when unobserved. Surrounding this heartstone were concentric rings of obsidian metal, each etched with sacrificial runes and bound by chains of living darkness harvested from the minds of imprisoned Force-sensitive slaves. When the ceremony began, acolytes draped in hooded cloaks chanted in a guttural tongue rarely spoken outside the deepest Sith tombs. They offered blood and bone as sacrifice, feeding their lifeblood into arcane conduits that circled the heartstone. As each drop fell, the engine hummed with growing hunger, drawing the life essence from the ground beneath and twisting the local force into a vortex of raw power. With every pulse, reality around the cavernous chamber trembled, as though the universe itself recoiled in terror at what was being born. Once primed, the Nameless Void engine required no fuel in the conventional sense. Instead, it lapped hungrily at the surrounding space-time, tearing microscopic rents that belched out dark energies and gravitational anomalies. The moment of activation unleashed a swirling abyss, a yawning rift that blossomed like an oozing wound in the starfield. Through that abyss, matter and energy were dragged ineluctably, flung about in a silent, unseen maelstrom before vanishing forever. Nothing could escape its pull. Cruisers, fighters, even photons of light would curve inexorably toward oblivion. Entire sectors fell prey to this devouring maw. Trade convoys vanished without a trace. Planetary systems blinked out of subspace logs as if they had never been charted. Maps left incriminating blank spaces where whole cultures and histories once thrived. The psychological impact on the galaxy was profound. No wreckage, no survivors, no evidence beyond the absence itself. This absolute erasure instilled a primal terror unmatched by any other weapon. Where worlds bombarded by conventional arms left ruins and ghosts, the void engine left only silence. And the gnawing question, were those star systems ever real? Over time, intelligence of the engine fluttered through the darkest corners of the Force. Jedi and scholars alike combed through scattered holocrons and archaic texts, piecing together fragmentary accounts of its power and peril. Many dismissed it as myth, an allegory of the Sith's recklessness, until a famed cartographer reported an entire star cluster gone. Sensors detected subspace tears, then nothing. The Republic mounted a direct investigation, but found only dead silence and gravitational distortions so severe that no probe could survive long enough to collect data. The engine's creators, drunk on the promise of ultimate destruction, eventually became victims of their own abomination. The rituals that sustained the device demanded ever greater sacrifices. The flow of dark energy began to spiral out of control. In a final cataclysmic miscalculation, the Cabal's sanctum was consumed from within. Witnesses, or what little remained of them, spoke of the fortress imploding in a cascade of shadow and flame, the engine's core collapsing into its own singularity, and dragging the surrounding spire cities into the void. Those who survived the initial collapse perished moments later, as reality tore itself apart around them. Afterwards, the Nameless void engine became the subject of fearful superstition. Its remains, if any fragments still lingered, were never found. With no physical wreckage, entire generations came to believe it was a cautionary tale, a dark parable about the limits of power. Yet whispered rumors persisted of buried relics, shards of the heartstone that pulsed with lingering hunger, or slivers of the obsidian rings that would whisper promises of annihilation to any force-sensitive soul who dared approach. In modern times, Sith cults occasionally claim to possess the knowledge to reconstruct the engine, trading fragments of lore for forbidden artifacts and the blood of the unwary. Jedi hunters of antiquity patrol ancient ruins in hopes of intercepting these designs, fearful that any reconstruction could spell the end of countless worlds. For the galaxy's current guardians, the engine's myth reinforces a grim truth. Some weapons transcend the physical, striking at the very concept of existence itself. As we emerge from the void left by the Nameless void engine, contemplating the eerie silence of places that once burst with life, we turn our gaze to a different pantheon of terror. Centerpoint Station. This colossal artifact, capable of moving stars and collapsing solar systems, represents the zenith of celestial engineering and the ultimate expression of control over the galaxy's very structure. The dark side's legacy marches on, ever pushing the boundaries of destruction and reminding us that, in the wrong hands, power without restraint becomes oblivion. The galaxy is not a fixed thing. It is a symphony, stars as notes, gravity as the conductor's hand. But what if the symphony could be rewritten? Enter Centerpoint Station, the oldest and coldest aria in the cosmic score, a relic from the Celestials, those god architects who shape the galaxy like clay. It is not merely a weapon. It is a prison for a power even the Sith dare not name. Forged in the mists of time, Centerpoint hangs in the Corellian system, a skeletal titan dwarfing planets. Its surface, pocked with age and riddled with cavernous docks, hums with the residue of hyperwaves, ripples that can nudge stars, collapse nebulae, or unspool solar systems like fraying thread. The station's purpose? Unknown. Its potential? Apocalyptic. The Corellian trilogy's crisis began with a tremor, the station awakening. A faction of madmen, drunk on its blueprints, sought to weaponize its ancient protocols. Their goal? To move stars like pawns on a chessboard, rendering entire sectors uninhabitable. Imagine Coruscant's sun wrenched from its cradle, hurled into the void. Imagine planets freezing in hours, their orbits unraveling. Centerpoint's activation was not destruction, it was rearrangement. But the station resists mastery. Its controls, etched in runes no scholar can decipher, demand a price. During the crisis, a young Jedi, Anakin Solo, channeled the Force into its heart, feeling the Celestials' echo, a presence vast and indifferent, like staring into the abyss behind creation. The station pulsed, hyperwaves rippling outward, stars flickered, systems trembled. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then silence. Centerpoint's near firing left scars unseen. Hyperspace lanes quivered with phantom energy. Planets reported tidal surges without cause, and in the station's depths, something stirred. A consciousness, a failsafe. The Celestials, it seemed, had built traps within traps. What truly chills is the station's duality. It created the Corellian system, aligning planets with celestial precision. Yet it can unmake them just as easily. A tool of creation turned to genocide. The Jedi Council debated destroying it. But how? Its armor laughs at turbolasers. Its reactors, if ruptured, might detonate with the force of a supernova. So it remains, suspended between salvation and ruin, a sword above the galaxy's throat. Legends whisper that the Celestials fled their own creation, fearing what they'd birthed. Modern scavengers tell of voices in its halls, screams folded into the metal, star song trapped in its wiring. Even Palpatine in his vaults of Sith lore called it the one engine even I would not awaken. Yet power beckons. During the Yuuzhan Vong War, rogue elements plotted to turn Centerpoint against the extragalactic invaders. The plan? Rip their fleet apart with manipulated hyperwaves. It nearly worked, until the station, capricious as a god, redirected the energy, vaporizing a nearby moon instead. The lesson? Centerpoint obeys no master. It consumes them. Today it drifts, a monument to mortal insignificance. The New Republic seals its docks. Historians pass its hieroglyphs. And the Force flows around it, wary. To walk its halls is to feel time's weight, to hear the hum of a trillion-year-old machine still dreaming of its makers. But machines can wake. Rumors persist. A cult, the Children of the Celestials, claims the station speaks in their dreams. A smuggler's log describes a glow in its core, brightening yearly. And in the unknown regions, a star cluster shifts position, slightly, as if tugged by an unseen hand. Centerpoint's greatest terror is not what it did, but what it might. A galaxy surviving Death Stars, world devastators, and Starkiller base now faces its oldest shadow. For when the Celestials return, and myths say they will, their station awaits, a loyal hound hungry for the hunt. The symphony nears its crescendo. Will the next note birth a star, or a silence that never ends? From the Malevolence's localized terror to Centerpoint's godlike stellar manipulation, these superweapons reflect Star Wars' central tension, the corrupting allure of absolute power. While the Death Star and Starkiller base dominate pop culture, the true apex lies in ancient, unfathomable tech like Centerpoint. A reminder that even in a galaxy of miracles, hubris births catastrophe. Yet, time and again, these monstrosities fall to the unyielding spark of rebellion. For all their might, they share one fatal flaw. They underestimate the Force's true power: hope. May this list remind us, no weapon, however grand, can eclipse the resilience of free will.